Hello, listeners. This is Indranil Sen, co-founder at Alter Ego Accelerators, and you are listening to the CHRO Mindset Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the CHRO Mindset Podcast, where we bring you candid, thought-provoking conversations with top HR leaders and experts. And here's your host, Pulkit Joshi.
Today, we have the privilege of hosting Indranil Sen, who is the co-founder at Alter Ego Accelerators. Indranil has been an advocate of establishing workplace culture and branding that is based on employee centricity. He bases his strategy on the formula EX equals CX, where EX stands for employee experience and CX stands for consumer experience. This means the quality of employee experience in an organization would be the quality of customer experience. The foundation of his values are deep rooted and stand firm on his years of experience with corporations such as American Express and IBM, where employees come first and customers thereafter. A happy employee builds an ecosystem of happy customers. Indranil is an executive alumni of the prestigious IIM Calcutta, University of Georgia, Harvard, and Cornell. Indranil, thanks for taking out time to speak with us today and welcome to the CHRO Mindset Podcast.
Pleasure is mine, Pulkit. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Indranil. Let's get going from here. So, if you could design a futuristic HR technology solution, what problem or challenge would it address, and how do you envision it transforming the HR landscape?
That's a great question considering we are evolving into the technology overall with ChatGPT, AI, and ML coming into play in the HR space. I think the existing HR technology solution offerings which we have are yet to attain the desired pace of evolution. And HR services have been deemed to be primitive and mechanical compared to other functions in an organization. These are neither intuitive nor employee friendly compared to CRM and supply chain platforms for customers. While CRM has entered into advanced stages of assimilating data around customer psyche and is able to induce customers to buy, supply chain technologies have matured to driving intuitive efficiencies. These are small steps in the right direction towards applying qualitative machine learning in these spaces. However, as an example, the best HR technology platforms uh, still require keying in information even after a resume is uploaded or a LinkedIn profile imported. Is this a candidate experience that is desirable? I don't quite agree. Machine learning has not matured to the extent that it can predict employee psyche with a high degree of reliability and validity, and hence AI in HR is limited currently to dashboarding of performance or generating letters using ChatGPT. Very mundane, very mechanical. Current platforms are designed by functional HR teams in an organization and the technical team of the technology partner. The objectives are isolated around reducing manual work only for the functional HR teams. Employee experience, which is EX, is not in the reckoning of the design scope, which renders the technology platform as good or not good by employees and candidates based on their experience. The need for the HR technology project teams today is to have employees in the project stages during product development. Their experience should be a key criteria for developing a minimum viable product. While I have over the last 15 years executed multiple implementations of HR technology platforms globally, given an opportunity, I would like to design a technology platform that captures the employee's life cycle via their experience. So it is essential to design the technology platform on their experience as the baseline. My current vision of an HR technology platform is one that is intuitive and flexible, baselining on minimal manual effort from the employee and not the HR teams. The platform should have high quality optical character resolution, voice command learning where employees can not just execute transactions on the platforms using voice commands on the lines of Alexa as we do in our day-to-day lives. Users are empowered to share their emotions, both personal and professional experience, and recommendations on the platform via audio-visual integrations. In addition to integrating their social media handles to read the patterns of employee behavior and convert into value-based indicators for the organization. Can you imagine the quantum and quality of human psyche that drives decision-making data that can this platform can generate? This could feed machine learning with data that would build the next generation of intuitive artificial intelligence for HR. That is my vision of the next generation and level of HR technology platform that I'd like to see in the marketplace and given an opportunity implement as well.
Awesome. That's a very visionary perspective for sure, Indranil. And I love the way how HR is now starting to take the bull by its horns when it comes to solving for larger challenges and solving them effectively with technology. Even generative AI is now sort of taking the world over, and I'm so thrilled to see the HR fraternity really leveraging it as well. So thank you for that. Let's get on to our next question. So talk to us a little more about what are the essential qualities or skills that contribute to HR excellence, and
Mhm.
how have you cultivated them throughout your career?
Sure. That's a great question, Pulkit. In fact, HR excellence is being claimed by organizations in their individual scope and limited horizons. But HR excellence just cannot be claimed by an organization. It has to be endorsed by the candidates and the employees and suppliers who experience the journey of human resources in an organization. The core of HR excellence has to be based on three major foundational principles as I see it. One, measurable outcomes that have interlinkages with business processes. These outcomes and processes need to be evaluated by the audience it impacts most, which is the employees, and not by HR who claims that their process is an excellent one. HR department has to accept learning from the outcomes and audience feedback to embark on a journey of continuous improvement. I have followed an unconventional method to drive HR excellence, and I've always adopted what I call as VOE, the voice of employee, and ENPS, which is the employee net promoter score. These have been primary input metrics to establish a culture of excellence using policies, practices, engagement, performance, and learning as a means to achieving the goal of excellence. I practice maintaining high diversity and inclusivity in my teams, including having people with a non HR background take up roles and projects to drive diversity of thought, approach, and change, not just for my teams, but for the organization as well. HR excellence, in fact, is institutionalized by best in class practices that are comparative in the marketplace and can be leveraged appropriately towards employer branding. This is best attained if organizations identify the best pedestals to participate and showcase their practices, such as participate in HR specific award categories, showcasing their practices in the industry via the voice of employees, or going for certification programs in HR. Not many know about the ISO standards in HR in India today, while all I know about such standards for IT, manufacturing, ESG, etc. True HR excellence can be showcased to the desired audience via these ISO standards that are true credentials of excellence and maturity.
Awesome, awesome. Again, I believe it takes more than while you have covered all the nuances, but I feel that HR excellence has a lot to do with building a culture of excellence, and I feel somewhere that has to start from the top, right? And I do feel that that's not only something that the HRs have to own, but it's also a corporate or a institutional level uh, change management that has to be run through. But thank you for that, Indranil. That again, fantastic answer. I'm very sure that our audience is keen to sort of implement some of these practices and some of these ideas that you have shared until now. So let's get going. Let's switch gears and let's get into a little more into specific HR domains, right? So talk to us a little more about what advice would you give to organizations that who are just starting their journey towards fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what are some practical steps that they can take to create an inclusive workplace culture?
That's one of my favorite topics that you've touched upon. So thank you for that, Pulkit. In fact,
Awesome.
as I see it through my years, uh, DNI, which is how we refer diversity and inclusivity today in
Yeah.
organizations, is a function that rolls into human resources and
Yeah.
thereby becomes a check in the box activity with goals that are measured by numbers and not outcomes.
Hmm.
Diversity and inclusivity in India is yet to be actualized in its full bloom. While we are as a nation more diverse than any other across the planet, and thereby have the maximum potential to set the stage for the world to embrace. But
Hmm.
DNI at workplaces is often limited to only gender diversity, or at the best showcased by sexual orientation. While
Hmm.
these are important, there is more to DNI than many know, since those are either not attractive enough for employers or is missed
Hmm.
out because of lack of an inclusive mindset in the leadership DNA and their inability to measure the outcomes comparatively. This causes
Okay.
imbalances in our society and thereby results in the administrative machinery of the nation to implement special measures for including them. So I'm referring to the reservations that we have across different stratas of society in our country. But there is not one policy or statute that we could refer to that actually encourages employers to build a DEI state of mind. Now, DNI is typically a state of mind that needs to be ingrained in the cultural DNA of individuals. That is otherwise conditioned and nurtured with biases influenced by so many cultural differences based on hard coded biases in our societies for centuries. An inclusive mindset at workplace requires an inclusive leadership team at the helm of the organization. A leadership team that's not diverse will not be able to establish an inclusive mindset. The
Hmm.
leadership team not only needs to be committed but also measured on inclusivity by autonomous and external bodies. They need to be open to place DNI as a priority as much as business results, and they need to walk the talk. One of the reasons DEI is often an avoided subject is because, number one, lack of awareness of how organizations could contribute to DNI, inability to define and measure outcomes of DNI, inability to record comparatives of outcomes with or without DNI and comparatives as against competition, as against other geographies, as against other institutions that have programs supporting DNI. So we don't have comparative mechanisms in our country right now through which we could compare whether a DNI program in an organization is good, bad, or ugly. Uh, I'll give you an example here, and that comes from the Google Maps that we all use often to navigate to a destination. The
Okay.
map provides comparatives on time, effort, and cost between different routes and allows us to apply our judgment on the route we wish to opt for while we are traveling.
Yeah.
Organizations are unable to draw comparatives of stimulated or actual results on how results would look with or without DNI. This
Hmm.
inability creates a fear of the unknown terrain and thereby restricts them to follow non DEI strategies that may have been part of their legacy. I believe organizations today need to rise and embrace DNI since it's inevitable. The UN Sustainable Development Goals for 2030 emphasize on DNI more than any other. ESG emphasizes on DNI. BSI and ISO have designed global standards on DNI. These are all here to stay and evolve. If organizations do not embrace this and build on their maturity while there is time, they will start losing out as these come into prominence and 360-degree organizational relationships, such as investors, clients, employees, and suppliers, start demanding for these. An organization that's genuinely desirous of being branded as inclusive needs to make visible and continuous efforts to break any and every unconscious bias that may exist in employees by setting up independent committees, which in the DNI space are often referred to as employee resource groups, that are
Okay.
empowered. These groups need to be empowered with decision making rights. DNI is a key sustainable development goal for 2030, as I said, and it is important that organizations make more effort towards driving the right environment that promotes D&I with a sense of belonging that would require a major overhauling of the legacy processes and practices built on unconscious biases that stand today.
Awesome. Another fantastic perspective there, Indranil. Let's now cover employee value proposition. I think that is another area which is of immense importance, especially in these times. So, talk to us a little more about what are the key elements or factors that contribute to a compelling EVP, and how do you communicate and reinforce these elements throughout the employee life cycle?
Sure. Uh, I'm sure you'd agree, Pulkit, not just our country, but across the globe, organizations are currently plagued with the high rate of attrition that prevails post the COVID era.
Yeah.
And personally, I believe not all of these high rates of attrition are contributed by the desire to have monetary gains or the desire to have exceptional uh, monetary and non-monetary benefit packages, but primarily on account of the fact that many organizations lack that employee value proposition, which I'm glad you bring up as a subject and a topic of our discussion today. Per my understanding, I think a compelling employee value proposition is one where decisions are based on the fundamental premise of employees first. Many organizations today are content with basic employee benefits and often misuse minimum wage ceilings and basic benefit programs to focus on business outcomes only, since there is no dearth of cheap labor in our markets. The
Hmm.
foundations of an effective employee value proposition goes back to the same metrics that I initially spoke about, the voice of employee and the employee net promoter score. Leaders and HR teams today need to listen to what employees see value in, since not employees are similar. This is another space where DNI also kicks in, and build on the diversity of the employee base to design value propositions and programs rather than deciding on behalf of the employee on what matters and what they should value. Organizations and HR teams today define a standard benefit plan for employees, which is at the best segregated by employee grades. For
Yeah.
example, insurance programs, employees at different grades and at different levels have different uh, insurance coverages that are extended to them. However, since there is no individual or two individuals who are alike, the opportunity that the HR teams fail to actualize is design the benefit programs and the value propositions tailor-made to an employee's need. Uh, they let employees have the flexibility to decide the definition of what is value for them. It is
Hmm.
standardization that HR teams want to drive today to reduce administrative work, and they impose a one size fits all value proposition that often backfires, causing increased attrition, low ENPS scores, and employee dissatisfaction. To cite an illustration of employee driven value proposition, uh, let's say not all employees see value in just compensation. Some are driven by benefit programs, some by learning opportunities, some via the option to have additional insurance coverage, some via social causes that an organization is associated with, and there are many more variants of what adds value for an employee. Hence, my advice is allow employees the flexibility to choose what matters to them during the transitional phases of their life, for them to have tailor-made value propositions that matter to them and builds a sense of natural belonging towards the employer.
Awesome. Thank you for that detailed answer, Indranil. Now let's shift gears now, Indranil, and talk about HR automation, which again is one of the most fascinating fields that are adding a lot of value to HR as a function. So, talk to us a little more about what are your thoughts on leveraging generative AI in HR, and how do you see it impacting the HR function in terms of efficiency, bias mitigation, and employee experience?
Pulkit, I think that's a fantastic question, given the fact that generative AI today is the need of the hour for organizations, for individuals, and for the larger society as such. Uh, this lot of progress that I have experienced has been made in multiple arenas where technology touches upon an organization. So, the marketing and the sales team, for that matter, have been able to read the human psyche well, to be able to bring out their best efforts, translate into greater customer acquisition, higher rate of client retention. Even supply chain, for that matter, has been able to make progress by leaps and bounds by introducing a lot of AI driven technology into their platforms and turn around cycle times, turn around customer experience, and again, uh, be very predictive in terms of deciphering the psyche of their customer base. But however, human psyche in the HR space is a different ballgame altogether. It is not just purchase, it is not just delivery, it is not just logistics, but it is a mix of a bag of emotions, uh, preferences, desires that all comes into play when we look at human resources per se and try to build technology platforms that would have the capability to read all of these very complex emotions and translate them into capabilities that are generative and regenerative through machine learning. This may take years, decades, even centuries for that matter, in terms of understanding what matters to an employee, what drives his behavior, what drives him on a day-to-day basis, and what are those key elements and levers that an organization can pull to drive the right employee behaviors. However, I think we made some progress while there's a lot to be done. When I look at the technology platforms that I have implemented over the years, that are still names to reckon with in the marketplace for HR technology today, I see there is a long way to go. While we've come a long way, we've covered a long distance as well. Some examples that I'll share with you, which drives a lot of employee angst when they work on current HR platforms, is a lot of these platforms have been designed, like I said earlier, by the HR teams and the functional teams in HR with the intent to reduce their manual administrative work and look at automating processes merely, but not with the mindset of trying to figure out the psyche and the preferences and the experiences of the users, which is, let's say, candidates and employees in this case. I think there's a need for evolving and there's a need for complete transformation of how we look at HR technology projects. I think the project teams should not just have the functional consultants and the technical consultants, but need to have the audience participate right from the design to the implementation phase, where the testing of these technology tools should be signed off by the audience and the customers, not the functional teams. Let's say, for an example, when I look at the current HR technology platforms, there are many who still require a lot of manual work and effort from candidates and employees. Uh, if it be as simple as a transaction of applying leave, as simple as a transaction of updating my attendance, or applying for a job as well. I think there's a lot that can be done by virtue of capturing the employee's preference. Now, with OCR technology, with voice enabled technology, with visual technology gaining prominence, there is a lot of information that is floating across various channels and platforms. I think HR technology now needs to evolve to focus on that individual, secure data from all possible channels of that individual, build a profile that is way beyond what a generic resume uh, can convey. And that helps an organization actually evolve to the next level of transformative understanding of what kind of talent, what kind of people they need to be working in their organizations. Through their social media handles, look at what matters to them, what do they care about, how do we build those elements around that employee value proposition, and of course, how do we keep them engaged by virtue of looking at not just an 8 hour, 9 hour work schedule, but how do we make their experience wholesome per se, with a lot of additional sources of information that is always surrounding these individuals. So technology in HR now needs to start transitioning from capabilities being automated to looking at studying individuals, reading individual preferences, converting that into machine learning, and driving all of those elements into good intuitive judgments that can help the human resources teams really gauge and gather enough information around an individual and make that individual's journey more uh, enriching, more satisfying, and more long-term oriented for an organization.
Awesome. I think those last three words say it all: enriching, long term oriented, and satisfying. Thank you for that, Anthony. Amazing perspective indeed. This brings me to the last question of this podcast. I wish this conversation would have lasted for a few more minutes because the answers and the perspectives that you've been sharing are very, very practical, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners would be getting a lot of value from it. So this is the last question, and it's a common question that we ask to all the guests. So, is there any literature or any book that has shaped your HR leadership journey?
Quite a few, in fact, right from the days when I used to be undergoing mentoring programs, the days that I stepped into my shoes of being an HR professional. Since, as you know, I was not born into the HR space. I gradually matured and evolved from being a hotelier to a banker to an HR professional over the years. So there was a lot of reading, there was a lot of knowledge gathering process that I went through myself personally. But I think there are two uh, literatures that I read many years ago, and I keep referring back to them even to date for various situations and complex relationships that these literatures very aptly address. One is The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, and the other is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. So these are two books or two pieces of literature that has actually helped me shape up into my journey into the as an HR professional and a people leader. And recent uh, programs that I've gone through have helped me realize the potential that I've gathered by going through this literature has been of invaluable experience and value to me.
Thanks, Indranil. It was a pleasure connecting with you, speaking with you, and learning so much about your perspectives on all things HR. Absolutely elated to have had you as a guest on the CHRO Mindset Podcast. Your perspectives and thoughts on the strategic mindset of CHROs has been incredibly motivating. Thank you for generously sharing your expertise and vision with us, and we were captivated by the practicality of your viewpoints. Thank you.
The pleasure has been all mine. It's been an honor and a privilege, I like to confess that, having this conversation with you. And I do hope we engage in such meaningful conversations in times to come as well. And this reaches out and helps inspire many who are looking at experiences across all of these domains. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Indranil. Absolutely. We would certainly get to a point where we'll have two timers, three timers club, right? So we'll love to host you again. Uh,
Sure.
to all our valued listeners, as we draw this episode of the CHRO Mindset to a close, we want to express our profound gratitude to each one of you. Thank you for tuning in and embarking on this exciting journey with us as we delve into the secrets behind shaping modern workplaces. Your support means the world to us, and we eagerly anticipate presenting more enthralling discussions with distinguished HR leaders in the time to come. Until our next episode, take care and stay connected. Your involvement is what fuels our passion, and we cannot thank you enough for it.
Thanks for listening to the CHRO Mindset Podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave us a review. Join us next week for another insightful conversation with a top HR leader. And if you have any questions or feedback, reach out to us on social media or via email. Thanks again for tuning in. See you next week.